I'm going to call this Plan Commission order for August 13th, 2018 to order. Roll call, please.
Chris Zellner.
Here.
Sue Springman. Here. Joe Zitzelberger.
Here.
Pat McGowan. Brian Malish.
Here.
Tim Black. Chris Thomas.
Here. What we have on the agenda is minutes. Not any problems. I look for a motion. Make a motion to approve. Motion by Chris Thomas, second by Joe Zitzelberger. Any other comments? Call the question. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Under old business, discuss and take action on site plan, Waunakee Pet Wellness Complex, Lot 15, Waunakee Business Park, Phase 2. Kevin?
Yeah, I think the Plan Commission has seen this a number of times in the past. At this point, we're at a staff level, we're in a position to recommend approval of the site plan conditioned upon all the comments completed to the satisfaction of the village engineer. There will be one more step that's required as part of this, and that's the conditional use. You had recommended a zoning change to GDP to allow for a CUP on this particular lot for this particular use. The village board just approved that, so now we had to publish the CUP, which we'll do now for the next meeting. So if you're comfortable, or if you have any questions about the site plan, I think the applicant's here, but we're at a staff level, we're certainly comfortable with the site plan.
Questions? Anybody speaking on behalf?
Right here,
Any
guys, how many
comments?
questions?
Okay. I saw the majority of the neighbors were all in good, had nice things to say.
Yeah, and they'll be noticed as part of the CUP process. Certainly, this is not their last stop, and they still need to get the zoning approved as part of the project. So the site plan will be certainly conditioned upon the CUP being approved.
Okay. Okay, so for what you're looking for this evening is?
I thought I had it in here, but.
Motion to approve.
Page 5.
Thank you.
List of comments.
So the motion is listed on page 5, if anybody's so inclined to do so.
Yeah, I'll move, motion to conditionally approve the site plan, subject to the outstanding items, approved by the village engineer, as listed.
Okay, motion by Brian Malik, second by Sue Springman. Any other comments? Okay, I'll call the question. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Okay. Next, we've got under new business, discuss and take, actually, I missed one thing, so I'm gonna go back. I didn't do our public comment. I checked it, but we didn't ask for it. Is anybody here that would like to make any comments on an agenda item, or something that's not on the agenda for this evening? Sorry. Okay, moving on. Under new business, discuss and take action on request by Best Defense Fire Protection and Security, 300 Moravian Valley Road, to install a 70-foot flagpole.
Carter's here from Best Defense, and if you're willing, I think it'd be willing, be best to have you come up and explain what you're proposing to do. It's generated some discussion at a staff level in terms of what's appropriateness in terms of height, so I suspect there'll be some discussion at the Plan Commission level.
Can you use them out a little bit? There you go. Oh, I'm Carter from Best Defense. We first built the property in, I believe it was 2008 we started, finished in 2009. The worst possible time to build a new building. So at the time, we just couldn't afford a monument sign out at the street. So the proposal is really two-part. One, we want a sign. We want a presence, so when people come to our office, they know who we are, where to find us. So we mocked up a sign, and as part of that sign, we wanted to add a flag. I started looking at some of the costs and so forth, and we initially looked at some different sizes and settled on looking to do a 70-footer. We wanted something substantial enough to notice. So, and the picture pretty much tells the story. Around the sign, that's actually a landscaping bed, and we'll plant some shrubs, so on and so forth. And the flag will probably actually sit back a little bit further than shown there, but that's the general overall concept.
Okay. Any questions from board members or comments? Sorry, commission members. My only comment is 75 or 70 feet
70 feet, yeah.
is it's considerably taller than anything else we have in the community, I'm assuming, for flagpoles. And That seems a little high to me, is what I'm getting at, for what we're talking
I
about.
looked at the differences, and I guess my thought is the bigger the better.
Okay, Kevin, do we know what our tallest flagpole is in the community right now?
We don't. It's either the one in Rip Park or it's the one right out here in Village Hall. And when you asked me earlier this afternoon, we didn't have time to measure them. I'm thinking the one out at Village Hall here is about 40 feet. I think Rip Park is probably something similar in size.
I know that one is 40 feet since I was involved in doing that. So those are our tallest flags right now. So we're talking almost doubling the tallest flag in our community. So how tall is a Perkins flag, for example?
What?
Those are massive and.
I know, I Googled it today and I couldn't come up with I got a mixed results in terms of what the answer to that is. I think they vary, because some communities have restrictions have restrictions in terms of American flags, others don't restrict on American flags. Ours is, there's certainly something to grasp to in terms of restricting the size of the limit if you're interested in doing that.
If that fell, would it stay on your property or would it go on to somebody else's property?
Yeah, that would, that's a question that we certainly can regulate as part of the cell tower regulations that we've recently adopted. The fall zone for like cell towers has to have a safety zone. And I don't know if we have an answer on that in terms of where that would land, in terms of if it would land off the property or on the property.
And are
It
there
would land in the right of way, obviously. If
any
it's-
issues with the airport? If people had to go off the regular path because of weather or whatever?
I don't think there's
I
gonna
don't
be
think
any
it would.
FHA, but any sidewalk cars sitting there that, in the right of way.
Yeah, it's less than, Joe emailed me today and asked me for a comparison for the water towers. And I didn't have the water tower height out in the business park, but I had the water tower downtown, which is at about 120 feet
Well,
to 120. But the water tower in the business park, what's required is that the water elevations of those have to be the same. So the water tower in the business park is actually 30 feet higher ground elevation compared to sea level. So it's probably at about 90 feet, the top of the water tower.
Saying that's misrepresentation.
The other issue here is, keep in mind, our building is about 20 feet higher up, 20 in elevation, because of the slope going up the building.
So would it be higher than the water towers? As you
No,
come
it
into
would be-
town? Because the
no, it
water
would-
towers is
you know,
kind of
it'd
a
be-
signature of Waunakee when you come in.
It'd be about 120 feet shorter than the water tower.
Oh, 120.
Well, that water tower is probably at about 90, so it would be about 20 feet lower than the water tower. At 70 feet would be about 20 feet lower than the water tower.
That's only 90 over there?
I think it's only about 90, if my math
Yeah,
is
our
right.
elevation's also considerably lower, too.
Yeah, I don't know,
because
yeah,
the
so your
whole-
elevation's probably
Yeah.
lower than the business park, where the water tower is.
Do you have an intent for any additional uses, I don't know, broadcast type,
Not at all.
anything on there?
No,
Okay.
no, I mean, I don't believe any of that's even legal on flagpoles.
Yeah, in fact, we would make that
Yeah.
certainly a restriction, that it be restricted to the American flag.
Yeah, no, I mean, out of respect for the flag having served, no, we absolutely wouldn't have anything on there. The light wouldn't be on there either, it would be on the back of the sign pointing up at it, so.
I've got a question. There's no scale on here.
Uh-huh.
Is this flag rendition, is this the originally proposed 50-foot, or does this actually represent the 70-footer?
That's actually the 70-footer, yeah.
Okay, it looks shorter than 70 feet. If the
The-
sign is 6 feet tall,
The sign in length
so the height
Yeah.
is 6 feet above grade.
for I think it's actually sitting higher in scale, but the sign, the best defense is 8 feet in length by 3
I'm
feet
going by
wide.
this, it says 6 feet.
This
And
is
if I scale it off with a piece of paper, I only get 50 feet on
Have
the
to look at
pole.
that. The total back of the sign, yeah,
I mean, if it is, it is.
Yeah.
I'm grappling with trying to visualize the actual height. And
Yeah.
if you take that 6 feet and then you climb up the pole, I come up with 50 feet
yeah.
with my own handmade graphic
It's-
scale.
it's
So
poss-
I want to be
yeah.
fair.
Yeah, and on that rendition, it's possible he didn't rescale it.
This is the original submittal that you sent me, so I believe it might be the 50-foot.
It might be the 50.
Yeah, so there's
Okay.
20 more feet of height.
I have my rendition right here. I'm guessing this is probably the,
Let me see what you got. Here, I'll show you what. Yeah, that's
That's the same
considerably
one?
bigger, but I'll show you what I just did.
yeah, you just
See,
scaled up.
that's the 6 feet, and I come
Yeah.
up to 50.
And that would be 8 for sure there.
No, I
Yeah.
want this dimension so I
Yeah.
can scale it.
Yeah,
But this
that-
is definitely
in
higher
here it
than what's
looks
in the
like-
packet.
Yeah.
But you see how I came up to
Oh, no,
50 feet?
yeah, because the sign's smaller and this is higher.
Yeah, so does everybody have the right
That was the
illustration?
50, Tracy?
That was the 50. I never got that 70 rendering.
Okay. Pass this down.
So we were originally looking at a 50-footer, when we looked at costs and so forth, there wasn't that much of a difference putting the larger pole up. And there's 60-foot options available too. But at 40 feet, I mean, it's just not that substantial.
We're approving the sign and a flag?
Yeah, I mean, administratively, I felt comfortable approving the sign because it's consistent with some of the other signage that's out there.
Yeah, the,
In fact, I was, I probably wasn't too uncomfortable approving a 50-foot flagpole in terms of open regulations, but then we went to 70. I gotta bring this to the planning commission. I don't want anybody to be surprised in terms of, seeing this tall of an object going up without some sort of vetting of the,
Well, I had a question on the signage. So is Best Defense on the other side as well? It's a two-sided?
Yeah,
Is
it'll
that
be
this-
mirrored on both sides.
And it's illuminated?
Correct, it's back.
And here, I can't, my eyesight's bad, I can't see the fire protection and security ink, but that lettering is underneath the Best Defense.
I would want fire protection and security under there, absolutely.
Yeah, and the concrete base below, it's just, that's it?
Well, the concrete base below obviously has to go on the ground for support, but yeah, decorative.
I was just surprised that you
Chamfer
didn't
edges
take
and so
more of the
forth.
concrete base given the size, but, yeah.
Well, the concrete base, we want to leave some room for some shrubs to grow
You're
up
gonna
around
put
it.
landscape,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
all right, otherwise.
So that looks a little bit higher than what I would like. If anything, it would be a little bit lower, but I do need to account for some shrubs to grow up about 2/3
No, that'll
inside.
look nice, I was thinking it was kind of plain and, yeah.
And just in general, I don't know if you've been over to Sapphire or our office, but we do a lot of decorative concrete countertops and so forth, and it's just, it fits into, I guess, who we are, and it's something we've gotten really good at, so.
My only concern on the height is I wouldn't want it to be the thing that sticks out above everything else in Waunakee, because I do think the water towers are kind of our signature. I don't want it to
Yeah.
be a flagpole somewhere, that isn't maybe in our park or.
I visioned American TV when it was American TV. I visioned Perkins, and I don't know what's off the interstate right now there.
Yeah, we'll be a little
Um,
bit smaller than the Perkins, I think, right, kind of in line with that.
It just feels like that. I mean, your rendering makes it feel like not really about the sign, it's about the flag, in my opinion in this.
Well, I mean,
And I'm all about flags. I mean,
Yeah.
I was one that implemented in that. I just feel that this is really, really a tall flag for that area, or any area in the village. So I'm grappling a little bit with that, especially since I realize we have, about 40 feet is where we're at now. I would be more open to going to the 50-foot, which you originally proposed, than the 70. That's me. You guys are gonna weigh in on this obviously as well. I'm assuming it's gonna be lit as well, the flag?
it has to be.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It has to be.
I didn't
either
see
lit
it in
or
here,
we're
that's why.
taken down at night, absolutely.
Okay.
And maintained, I mean, again, I serve that, those flags need to be maintained and cared for.
Do we know where your lights are gonna be on the flag from?
The back of the post here, pointing straight up, we have some very narrow, I think they're 15-degree beams designed to point straight up.
Okay.
And we'll shield them from traffic and so forth.
How tall can you go before having to bring it to this commission?
I didn't know the answer to that question, so I brought it here.
That's why we're here.
I think you could go to basically what's out in front of the village hall. I think the one thing I would tell you is whatever height you approve here, if somebody else walks in the door and they want to put up another flag, you're kind of, short of an ordinance change, you're kind of setting the bar. And so, I would just point that out as you're making your decision tonight.
And I would,
50 seemed very reasonable,
and
because
to
that's taller than the one that's out there.
To
certainly.
clarify my, I would be in agreement to set a stipulation that it would only fly the American flag, the Packer flag, or the Badgers flag. You'll never see it flying a Bears flag, or a Jolly Roger or anything like that.
So, I'll put that out to all of you right now. Joe, you haven't really said anything yet.
Well, I went out and drove over there today. Also did a little bit of digging. Found that the two flagpoles at the Middleton Fire Department, and those serve a dual purpose with their radios, I guess. Those are about 80 feet. So that's in the ballpark of what we're talking, a little bit higher, but I don't know, that seems really
Guess so.
substantial for this area.
That's also Beltline
True.
access right there.
True.
And that's got
And
a
cell
massive
tower.
mast
Yep,
going
it
at
is.
the interchange.
Oh, yeah.
It's
Yep.
Yeah, those poles are massive.
it's not as big as the one in Sheboygan, but it's coming close.
Is that the 400 foot?
So,
Yeah,
Where's that one?
Sheboygan.
Right,
Wow.
it's just to
It's
the,
fallen over a couple times, so they finally got it right.
right next to the insurance company, south of
Okay.
Sheboygan. It's biggest flagpole in America.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
That's how they advertise it.
Oh, well.
Would there be a possibility of separating the flag from the sign and moving the flag closer to the front of the building?
Well, not too far. I mean, for your concern also, the closer we get to the building, the higher up we get in that hill.
True.
So, and at that point in time, it's just not terribly noticeable. And
How close is it to the building?
right now.
They didn't have a site plan.
Gosh, yeah, I don't have a site plan either, but I would say we're probably, gosh, Kevin, 120 feet,
So you're,
150 maybe,
so you got 50-foot safe zone there
from the,
on the base of the pole. If it falls, it'll miss the building by 50 feet is what you're
oh,
telling me.
yeah, I mean, it's gonna miss the building, that's no problem.
Okay.
Yeah,
Any public sidewalks to the building?
no,
Okay.
no. Yeah, and I mean, when you look at the structure they have in the base of these things, it's a couple yards of concrete just for the base. It's pretty impressive, the base that you gotta put in on these.
Well, it has to withstand a 100-mile-an-hour wind load.
Yeah.
The pole, not the flag.
Yeah.
I guess,
I'm,
okay.
well, I was just saying, I'm feeling a little, I guess, reluctant to green light it tonight. Just, I feel like there's a little bit more backstory, a little more research, a little more to the comment about setting a precedent. I don't know that I'm quite prepared to say, okay, green light, 70 foot's our mark going forward. I'm also not ready to just say no either. There's just maybe a little bit more information I'd like to know. Height, what is maybe an appropriate, I don't know, point? Is it 40, is it 50, just as a rule of thumb? But then also kind of relative height, putting some actual topography to this thing, so we know, we know where you're sighted, kind of that line, the line of sight discussion of as you're entering Waunakee, coming in from the east.
Sure.
A 70-foot pole, if it's, way down here, doesn't look like a 70-foot pole, whereas if you're further to the north of the street, it's
I
gonna
don't,
stick out a lot more. So for me to really feel like I can make a decision, those are a couple of things I'd want to know. Maybe relative height within, the
Yeah.
community where 70 on your property
Yeah.
puts us. And then also just, God, I don't know, what is that rule of thumb? Is it 50 foot regardless, or?
So the visual that's in my head, similar to what you're saying, is I'm seeing our flagpole out here, and I'm saying we're gonna go up almost double
Yep.
on a street that's a side street in the village, really. I mean, it's out in an industrial park, it's not,
I mean,
not like it's downtown, but I just
Yeah.
see that as overkill to what we're looking at doing. I mean, if we can do this, Brian, you can maybe tell me, can we just say we can approve this up to whatever the tallest flag is in Waunakee right now? And then come back with, after we do a little more research with the topography? I don't know what your time frame is for getting
I'm
started.
not, I want at least the sign and a base in the ground, obviously before a freeze.
Right.
So we could,
But it's mostly about the sign,
okay,
but
so we could approve the sign, we could approve up to whatever our tallest flagpole is in the village right now, and then consider based on elevations, maybe we wanna look at a policy with that, with where it would stand in the village?
How other people are impacted by it visually, depending on.
I think that you could definitely approve this. Yeah, I think you could even, if you're comfortable with 50 feet, you could approve it up to 50 feet. If you're comfortable saying whatever the highest flagpole is up to that point, I think the area where we would need to do more research likely is on this relative height that's a reasonable statement for someone to make, to say that's what we want to look at, is relative height. But obviously, we're not in a position to respond to that right now. Without question, you could do a motion that says, motion to approve the flagpole up to the highest flagpole in the village current height. I mean, or, I'm not sure what that is. Are we comfortable that that's under 50 feet?
Pretty sure we're under 40 feet. I mean, 40 feet, I think, is the max that we're
40.
at right now.
And then, I mean, you might want, I mean, you could maybe just say, motion to approve flagpole at a height of 40 feet at this point, and then if he wants something bigger than that, staff would have to take a look at it and can come back to the plan commission.
I do like the thought of the relative height, something similar to what Madison has done with the Capitol and keeping, you know,
Profiles.
kind of that, yeah.
The buildings, nothing can go higher. Got it. Okay, would anybody like to make a motion, or are you guys waiting for me to do this?
or would you like me to resubmit with some relative heights?
I think they're trying to give you at least an
I'm
option.
trying to get it so you can get
40
started on
feet
your
now.
sign
It's your
going.
sign,
You
and
know, I
then,
appreciate you working with me too, so, I mean, for next month, we can get some references in relative height to the water tower, for example, because the base of the water tower is at about this elevation. And, you know, it's far further that way. Actually, it's probably even higher, because this whole hill goes up as you get closer to Culver's. So, you know, it's probably closer to that elevation or so.
So Carter, it sounds like you ask them just the delay action on the
Yeah, I'm fine
flagpole
with
till
that.
next month.
And
just approve the
likewise,
sign.
if you want to keep it simple, I'd be appreciative of even 50 feet. And that way, it's just easy for everybody. So,
All right, I'll make the motion to approve the sign as presented and up to 50 foot on the flagpole, but I still want us to do something with figuring out topography, that we put something in play for that, for the future.
well, the,
Not for you
Oh,
necessarily.
yeah, but
in
You
general.
got a motion, you got a second.
yeah,
So, I made the motion.
in,
I'll second.
Chris, the,
Chris made a second. Hold on,
the base for the 50 is,
Hold on.
sure.
hold on. So, there's been a motion made and seconded. Do we have any more comments up here? Can I let him speak again? Go ahead now.
The base for the 50 and the 60 is the same. So I would be happy to do that research for you, so you have it, so you could see it, and then like I said, I'd be fine with the 50, but if you see it next month and say, hey, we're fine with the 60, then by the time I order the flagpole, I just order the 60, because I wouldn't be ordering anything other than the base right now anyway.
So we have a motion for up to 50. Sign is good. I appreciate the offer to do that. I'll still direct staff to do that, though, because that's just the way we
No, I
have to
think,
do
no, I
it.
think, well, you know, I don't wanna expend village money that we're gonna have to reimburse us. I'd rather have him do the research and we'll
Yeah.
review it and see if it's accurate.
Yeah,
Understood.
yeah, so
It'll
we,
come to them is what I'm saying.
we
instead of
take the
us right
50
away.
basically, and then,
Okay. All right, so we have a motion and second. Anybody else, any comments? Okay, I'll call the question. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you.
thank you very much.
Okay, next we've got discussion of draft changes to zoning codes related to building height standards, lot area standards, and setbacks for more restrictive districts. Kevin?
The action that, if you feel comfortable moving forward tonight, is not to approve these zoning codes, but actually to move forward with the public process, which would include a voluntary or an additional plan commission public hearing, and then the required public hearing at the board level with proper noticing to go, to take place. So in the packet, I thought Jason did a really nice job of outlining what we're proposing in terms of changes to the zoning code. And well, my point of all that is there's gonna be plenty of opportunity for public input on these proposed changes as moving forward. I wanted the plan commission to get comfortable with these before we start really engaging the public in the process of reviewing these. So with that, Jason couldn't be here tonight, but he will be here at the next meeting. He had a conflict tonight. So with that, maybe, Brian, you interested in like just walking them through just a couple of the major items and the proposed zoning changes?
Sure, so I'm looking at starting on page 55 of the packet. And so the ordinance changes are broken into numbered sections 1 through 10. When you look at numbered sections 1 through 8, these all relate to height restrictions and height standards. And the village already approved a change to the C1D zoning district, where you had a 45-foot height restriction, and then we put in standards that said, okay, if you want to go over 45 feet, there are 4 standards that you have to satisfy as part of a conditional use permit process that would allow you to go over the 45 feet. And so essentially, when you look at sections 1 through 8, with 2 exceptions, that's all we've done in different districts, is we haven't changed the maximum height in any of these districts. What we've said is if you're gonna go over the 45-foot maximum height, here are the standards that you would be subject to. And so when you look at paragraphs, or sections 1 through 6 of the ordinance amendment, there we have we deal with the R5 multifamily district, we deal with the O3 administrative office district, and we deal with the C1 general commercial district. And effectively what we're proposing is to establish the same rules for those 3 districts as currently apply to the C1D district. And so we have in fact, the exact same standards that the village board adopted for the C1D zoning district. If you're gonna go over that 45 feet, one of those standards being you're absolutely capped at the 55 feet. The difference for paragraphs 7 and 8, and so now I'm on page 57 of your packet. For the industrial districts, I1 and I2, at a staff level, we thought that there were 2 standards that were appropriate, but then 2 other standards that had been applied in the C1D that wouldn't be appropriate in industrial. And I think our thought process was, if we're in an industrial district, we may be more willing to allow the building to go up to 500 feet with fewer standards than, let's say, in a commercial district or a residential district. So if you look at paragraphs 7 and 8 of the ordinance, what you'll see is that for both of those standards, they have A and they have B that deal with maximum height and then setback for anything that's over 45 feet. But we have taken out the C and D standards that are in the other portions of the proposed ordinance amendments. And one of those, the C standard is the total surface square footage of the parts of the building that is above 45 feet cannot exceed 25% of the total square footage of the first floor of the building. So you're dramatically limiting how much of the structure can be above 45 feet. We think that makes sense in a residential district or in a commercial district. In an industrial district, our thought process is, you know what? If they need to go above that 45 feet for an industrial type building, why would we take the top floor and say that can only be 25% of what the other building? And we just, for the industrial district, we thought that was a little too restrictive. And then we also took out D, which is the parts of the building that are above 45 feet in height shall be used only for purposes that are accessory to the primary use of the building. Our thought process there is that's actually probably unnecessary, because if you have an industrial building that's going over 45 feet, it's not even an accessory use to the building. It's likely related to the principal purpose for the structure. So when it came to those two districts, we didn't think that those two standards would apply. And so I'm gonna stop there in case, I mean, because those first 8 sections all deal with those height restriction standards, in case there are any questions.
Chris? Joe?
I think if we get a directive at this point to move forward with 1 through 8, that would be appropriate,
Are you comfortable with that?
as long as we get consensus. All right, thank
Yes.
you.
So, section 9, so this is, we currently have language in our code that's identified as a lot area standard. And it's only in section C1D, which is the commercial downtown district. And I think going back to Kevin's comments about Jason's memo, he provides a paragraph as kind of the justification for section 9. And then Jason had also prepared a memo a while back that touched on this subject too. And I think the key language from staff's perspective is when you look at his memo and you look at his the paragraph he has on item 9, he said, "This is a reasonable practice that acknowledges the spatial challenges of redevelopment in the downtown." And that's pretty much why staff has come to the Plan Commission and then potentially, depending on what you say, to the village board, to modify this language. We're keeping the standard in place within the code, but we want to provide for some mechanisms such that if you have some adjacent property that can be utilized to satisfy certain restrictions, for example, stormwater parking, and the right scenario exists such that for certain, these adjacent parcels can be utilized for that process because there's a contract in place. Within his comments, Jason notes that we might want to have a written agreement to be recorded. We could add that language if you wanted to. I think that we already have language in here that says that there has to be a written agreement. I think the only thing that we would add to it is be recorded. But what we're getting at here is we'll keep the density restriction in the code, but we want to provide for some mechanisms, and Hovde is an example of utilizing adjacent parcels for stormwater or parking, because our concern is if we don't have this flexibility, then it's going to prohibit potentially downtown development, because obviously if you look at downtown development, you already have your parcels that are created. You already have your roads that are there. And fundamentally, most people believe that, downtown redevelopment is a good thing. If you're developing something, let's say out in Kilkenny Farms, well, you get to create that parcel, whatever size you want it to be. So you're never going to have the issue with, well, my parcel is this big and I have a project that makes sense, but I can't increase the size of my parcel because I already have the roads where they exist, and we're not, going to discontinue Main Street or Madison Street. That's what this ordinance is getting at. And one of the standards that we identified as part of this is the fact that, you have the parent parcel, which is where the principal structure would go. And then to the extent that you would utilize other parcels for parking or stormwater as an example, what this says is that those other parcels, and there's a couple of standards in here. First of all, the other parcels would have to be within 500 feet of the parent parcel. And then we get into the idea that the subordinate parcels that would be used to assist the parent parcel, we're going to have the ability to make sure that those subordinate parcels are in fact used for this purpose. And that's where you get into the written agreement, where we have to be a party to the written agreement to make sure that somebody's not just telling us that they can use a subordinate parcel for this purpose. They're going to have to prove it to us, and they're going to have to give us some rights to ensure that it continues to be used for that purpose if we're going to approve their project.
Go ahead.
So you're thinking this would come into play mostly for stormwater and parking? What else might come up?
I can't think of anything off the top of my head of something that we would require for a project where they would potentially need to go off-site for it. Those are the two that come to mind.
I would absolutely want it recorded into the future as long as it has to be, as long as that project is there, because otherwise, I know what happens. They disappear. People forget. People change.
Okay, any other comments? I agree with you.
Makes sense.
Okay, same thing.
Consensus move forward on that one?
With the addition of making sure that the
Making it
agreement
recorded
gets
document.
recorded. Yep.
And it's written properly, so it holds up.
Yeah. Well, everything's gonna be subject to our approval, so we'll be able to control what that document says. So, I'm gonna touch on the last one, but this is an area where, certainly Jason has provided a lot of input. We have already in our code language, so I know I'm on page 58 of the packet. In section 133-12D, we already have this language that talks about setbacks when we have districts that are abutting one another, and one has, let's say, more restrictive setbacks than the other. When we were going through the process of reviewing and then ultimately bringing the Hovde project to the Plan Commission and to the Village Board, one of the board members, I think it was Dr. Ranum, made a comment of, when we're looking at a project of this nature, it's not just the setbacks that you'd want to take into consideration as they relate to, adjacent districts, if there are different districts. What about height restrictions too? And I think that Jason touches on this properly when, I'm looking at now page 54 of your packet, and so this is the second page of Jason's memo, and he says, "The intent of this change is to help new development, and especially infill development, fit into neighborhoods more effectively by limiting the apparent difference in height and mass." And so that's what this is really getting at. We already have some language in the code that deals with setbacks, but what about buildings that may be taller than, or let me restate that. What about one zoning district that allows a maximum height that is higher than an adjacent zoning district? And, for one example would be, I think, some places we have a 45-foot maximum, and in other places we have a 35-foot maximum. What this is trying to get at is, how are we going to deal with the lot that is in the zoning district that allows the higher height, but it's immediately adjacent to the district that has the lower height? How do we work that in to our planning process in a way that's similar to how we deal with setbacks? And that's the purpose for basically section 2, sub A and sub B of what was put together. And I would tell you that of all the different ordinance changes that we've been working on that are in the packet, this is the one that I think staff has wrestled with the most, of trying to come up with language that essentially captures that sentence that Jason had in his memo, and that was, I think, the intent of what Dr. Ranum was getting at when he made his comment.
Okay. Comments? Consensus? Yes? Brian?
Yes.
Sue?
So,
Yes, it's just always hard to anticipate every possibility that's gonna come before you. Because there might be a better solution that comes up, and it might not be written exactly the way you want it.
This is the one, admittedly, this is the one that we've struggled with.
That's-
How do we,
I mean, this puts restrictions within a zoning classification that wouldn't exist if they didn't abut right next to another residential property. So we're just trying to get at, and it can be much more complicated, but we tried to keep it simplified and not overburdensome in terms of, I think there was even a suggestion when we had the public outreach. Maybe we should measure the existing houses and make it comparable to the houses that are across the street. Well, those change, that would be pretty convoluted and tried to track.
So do we, this height, does that include your mechanicals? Does it include elevator?
no, it doesn't. I mean, we already have
Those are
language.
excluded from that?
Yeah, we already have language in our code that things like,
What about a roof garden?
Describes the height.
well,
I think our
Want to
height is
encourage roof
described.
gardens just because they're.
well, no, I mean, I have that
Outdoor
ordinance right
public
with me
space.
here, just 1 second. So,
I'm just curious.
yeah, and so, for example, in section 133-13 of our code, it talks about the fact that these types of projections are not covered by our height restrictions.
But do we control them somewhere relative to where they're positioned, how they're screened, so visually and
Yes.
aesthetically, we address them and they're not just,
I would say this, I mean, like, two responses to that. First of all, as part of the site plan approval process, we would have the authority over the screening.
okay.
The second is, just because some of these things may not be covered by our height restrictions, we still have the authority to determine how high they will go. It's, I think when you look at this particular section of the code, it's crafted with the understanding that, okay, you could have buildings that fall within the normal height restrictions. You have a building that's not 42 feet high, but then you have some of the mechanicals that would take it above the 45 feet. You shouldn't have to go through a conditional use permit process to get that. You should be able to just get your building approved, but then the screening would be as part of the site plan approval process. There's a number of different, but, you know, elevator penthouses is one of the examples of not covered by the height restrictions.
There can be times you don't wanna have it on the roof though, depending on noise and stuff. So you'd have the ability to say, remove, put it
Correct, as
somewhere
part of the site plan approval process.
in, underground parking or something.
So do we have consensus? Chris? Joe? Okay. I would only point out that on page 58, that when I sign this, there's an N in Zellner. It's just to make sure my name is spelled right in there.
They're trying to let you get off the hook.
And the other thing is, for ease of our commission in the future, all these are being amended, but the original's not necessarily right here too, that we have to go look to find that. So wouldn't it make sense for us to have the original right next to what's amended? when we
Do you
see
want a
this?
red line? We can provide you with a red.
It would just be much easier for us as well as the general public if they're right there. 'Cause I had to go and look in a different area to find what the original was. So just for future, if we can
We can provide a red line.
provide that.
Good comment.
Okay, do we need anything else? Do we need a motion with this or that?
No,
Just
consensus
directive.
is fine.
Okay, one more motion.
We have to do the joint plan. Wasn't on the agenda. Sorry. It's in the packet, it just didn't make it on the agenda.
I saw that it was in the packet. I just didn't know if it was just, we're not supposed to do it tonight or what?
We don't have to take action on anything, it's just for informational purposes. I did not see that it did not make it on the agenda, I apologize.
I read them. Did anybody else need any clarifications from anything in the joint plan? Any corrections needed for our members that aren't here? So, motion by Chris to adjourn. Second by Joe. Any other comments? Call the question. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you, everybody.
So, fair to say.